She called it a harmless test drive. I just want to see how it feels before you leave, my husband said, twirling the keys to my Mercedes around his finger like it was some new toy he'd never touched before. I should have said no. But I didn't. Because the next morning I was supposed to be flying overseas for a 3-week consulting contract, and saying no would have meant questions. And questions meant attention. At the time I still believed loyalty meant trust without investigation. So I smiled, kissed his cheek and handed him the keys. Keep it under 100, I joked. He laughed. But something in his eyes didn't match the sound. I didn't understand it then. I do now. My name is Elena Ward. I'm 38. Financial strategist. Net worth just over $3 million. Married for 6 years. And until 5 days ago I thought betrayal was loud. Turns out, it's quiet. Precise. Planned. The next morning, while grabbing my sunglasses from the glove compartment before heading to the airport, I noticed something wrong near the passenger side floor panel. The seam. It had shifted. Not broken. Not loose. Too clean. Too intentional. A cold ripple went down my spine. I crouched, pressed my fingers into the edge and pried. The panel popped open just enough for me to see inside. And there was a small black magnetic GPS tracker. Hidden perfectly inside a cavity that shouldn't even exist unless someone knew the car's internal layout. My stomach dropped. This wasn't curiosity. This was surveillance. He didn't borrow my car. He planted something in it. For a few seconds I just sat there in silence, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. Then something unexpected happened. I didn't panic. I didn't cry. I didn't confront him. I smiled. Because if he was tracking me it meant one thing. He was hiding something bigger. So I did what I always do when numbers don't add up. I investigated. I charged the device. Studied the model. Found the frequency. Learned how it synced to its app. And that night, while he slept beside me like a man with nothing to fear, I swapped it. I placed the tracker under the rear bumper of his car instead. Carefully. Quietly. Precisely. Then I went back to bed and pretended to sleep. At 11:52 p.m. his car left the driveway. My phone screen lit up with movement alerts. I watched every turn. Every stop. Every red light. He didn't go to the gym. Didn't go to a late-night store. Didn't meet coworkers. He drove across town. To a house. A small modern place tucked into a quiet neighborhood I'd never seen before. The front door opened. A woman stepped out. Barefoot. Laughing. Wearing one of those oversized shirts that wasn't hers. She wrapped her arms around his neck and kissed him like she'd been waiting all day. Like she knew him. Like she owned him. My chest tightened but I didn't look away. I watched the timestamp. He stayed inside for 56 minutes. Long enough to confirm everything. And worse. I was parked half a block away in the shadows, engine off, the tracker app glowing in my hand like proof of a crime scene. When he finally came out he was smiling. Relaxed. Alive in a way he hadn't been with me in months. She followed him to the door holding a wine glass, barefoot on the concrete, completely unconcerned about being seen. That told me everything. People who fear consequences hide. People who feel safe don't bother. When he came home he slipped into bed beside me like nothing had happened. Kissed my shoulder. Sleep well, babe, he whispered. I did. Because I had no intention of reacting like a fool. I had something much better planned. And over the next 72 hours, I started digging. Over the next 72 hours, I uncovered more about my husband than I had in 6 years of marriage. And every discovery felt like peeling paint off a wall, only to find rot underneath. The tracker itself traced back to a private subscription account registered under a shell company. Not mine. Not his. But funded. 2 weeks earlier a transfer had been made into that account. $7,000. Small enough not to trigger alerts. Big enough to matter. The sender's name took longer to uncover. But when I finally found it I felt something inside me go very still. Marcus Hale. No listed employment. No visible income stream. But he had just placed a down payment on a Tesla. And was browsing condo listings in cash-heavy neighborhoods. That wasn't coincidence. That was preparation. My husband wasn't just cheating. They were planning something. And suddenly the tracker made sense. If I disappeared, if something happened while I was overseas, he'd have location data. A timeline. An alibi. My pulse slowed instead of racing. Because fear wastes time. Strategy wins. So I made adjustments. Quiet ones. I updated my will. Met with my estate attorney. Removed my husband's name from every asset he assumed he was about to inherit. Properties. Accounts. Investments. Insurance beneficiaries. Everything. Legally airtight. Irreversible without my consent. He thought I was flying out of the country Friday morning. But he didn't know. I had already cancelled the trip. Friday arrived like theater. He packed my suitcase himself. Neatly folded clothes. Rolled socks. Travel-sized toiletries lined up with obsessive care. He even slipped a handwritten note into the side pocket. Miss you already. The performance was almost impressive. He walked me to the car. Hugged me tight. Kissed my forehead. Waved from the driveway as I pulled away. I smiled back. Then drove straight past the airport exit. Circled 3 neighborhoods over. And parked inside my friend Daniela's garage 5 blocks from my house. Then I waited. 32 minutes later. His car left the driveway. No hesitation. No guilt. Just movement. My phone still connected to our home security system. I opened the live feed. And watched him disable the alarm panel. Perfectly. A code he had claimed for years he could never remember. So he'd practiced. That realization didn't hurt. It clarified. Because betrayal stops being emotional once you see the planning behind it. I followed the tracker again. Same house. Same woman. This time I didn't drive over. I already knew enough. Instead I called someone else. A favor I'd been holding for years. Evan. Former colleague from my corporate security consulting days. Quiet. Discreet. Professional. He owed me. I need surveillance, I told him. No questions, he replied. By that evening he had footage. Clear. Undeniable. My husband and the woman on the porch laughing. Drinking. Her leaning into his chest like they were already a couple. And then the part that mattered most. Audio. Not perfect. But enough. When it's all yours, she said. Yours. Not ours. His. Meaning my estate. My stomach twisted but I forced myself to stay calm. Emotion clouds judgment. Information sharpens it. That night I checked into a hotel downtown. Alone. Quiet. Focused. The next morning I sat across from my attorney and transferred every liquid asset I owned into a revocable trust under sole control. No spousal access. No automatic claims. No loopholes. We also rerouted my life insurance beneficiary to my younger brother. My financial life was untouchable. I kept the illusion going. Texted my husband photos from the airport lounge I'd taken months earlier. Scheduled messages to send during flight hours. Maintained the narrative that I was overseas. And for 4 days, nothing happened. Then day 5 came. And he made his move. Motion alerts lit up my phone while I was sitting in a cafe across town. Front door opening. Alarm disarmed. 2 figures entering the house. Him. And her. He walked her through my front door like it already belonged to them. Laughing. Relax. She kicked off her shoes immediately. Barefoot on my floors. He always claimed he hated shoes indoors. Turns out, he only hated rules when he was pretending to respect me. I watched through the security feed as they moved into the kitchen. He opened my liquor cabinet. Pulled out the bourbon I'd been saving for a future celebration. Poured 2 glasses. Then she raised hers and said words that burned straight through the screen. To the rest of our lives, she smiled. Soon. I didn't feel anger anymore. Just focus. Because this was exactly what I'd been waiting for. I didn't rush. That's the thing about control. Once you have it, you don't waste it. I watched them move through my house for almost 90 minutes. 90 minutes of proof. Him tossing his jacket over my dining chair. Her opening cabinets like she'd already memorized where everything was. Both of them drinking my bourbon. Laughing. Comfortable. Like I was already gone. When the timer on my phone hit exactly 1 hour and 30 minutes. I made the call. Not to him. Not to her. To someone much more useful. An off-duty deputy who lived 3 houses down from mine. I'd spoken to him 2 days earlier, casually mentioning I might need help if someone unauthorized entered my property while I was traveling. He told me to call anytime. So I did. My security cameras showed 2 individuals inside my home, I said calmly. I'm out of town. They don't have permission to be there. His tone shifted instantly. I'm on my way. I switched back to the live feed. 2 minutes later there was a knock at my front door. My husband froze mid-step. The woman looked confused. He opened the door halfway, shirt slightly unbuttoned, drink still in his hand. Can I help you? He asked. The deputy smiled politely. You sure can, he said. Whose house is this? Silence. My husband glanced back at her. She went pale. That moment, that exact second when realization hits, is something you never forget. Because lies collapse fast when reality walks through the door. They were escorted outside. No handcuffs. No arrest. Just a clean, legal removal from property they had no right to occupy. Enough to shake them. Enough to create fear. Exactly what I wanted. That night my phone lit up with missed calls. 3 from him. 2 from unknown numbers. Then a text. There's been a mistake. We need to talk. No, we didn't. Because while he was standing on my lawn being questioned, my attorney was filing the final clause activation in my trust. The infidelity clause. The one he never knew existed. By morning, everything he thought he was about to inherit was legally gone. Completely. Irrevocably. At 9:12 a.m. my attorney called. He's here, she said. Wants answers. Give him the packet, I replied. Then watch his face. I arrived 20 minutes later, but I didn't go inside right away. I watched through the glass doors. He looked perfect. Tailored shirt. Expensive watch. Hair styled like nothing had happened. But his hands were shaking. My attorney's assistant handed him a thick envelope. He opened it slowly. Inside was everything. The amended trust. Notarized filings. Asset transfers. Beneficiary removals. Account protections. And a formal letter from the firm stating, as of this date Mr. Ward is no longer a beneficiary of Mrs. Ward's estate due to verified breach of marital integrity. He read it once. Then again. His face drained of color. He stood up so fast the chair fell backward onto the floor. People in the lobby turned to look. He didn't say a word. Just walked out. That silence? More satisfying than any argument could have been. Back at the house later that afternoon I watched the security feed again. He stormed inside. Pacing. Running his hands through his hair. Calling someone. Her. Over and over. Voicemail. Voicemail. Because she had her own problem now. One I'd discovered the night before. Turns out, she'd loaned him $25,000 weeks earlier. Money she expected to recover once they secured my assets. But my assets were gone. Blocked. Protected. Untouchable. And when the joint accounts he secretly depended on stopped responding, he panicked. Hard. By evening he stopped answering her calls entirely. He started unraveling. Text after text. Message after message. All ignored. I watched her emotional collapse in real time through the fragments he left behind. Wine glass in hand one moment. Full breakdown the next. Meanwhile, I was sitting in a quiet apartment across town. One I'd leased 2 months earlier. Back when the first inconsistencies in his behavior started. Because while he had been planning his future with someone else, I had already been building mine without him. By the end of the week he started calling me every hour. Blocked numbers. Unknown IDs. Even his sister's phone once. Every voicemail sounded more desperate than the last. Elena, please, we need to fix this. You misunderstood. I made a mistake. You're still my wife. No, I wasn't. I was his exit strategy. And now, the exit had closed. But what he didn't realize yet was that I was still 3 moves ahead. Because betrayal doesn't happen alone. It leaves a trail. And I had followed every inch of it. The affair wasn't the worst part. It was the money. Specifically, where it came from. While reviewing financial records with my attorney, we discovered an account I didn't recognize. Jointly opened. With my name on it. Except I had never signed anything. Never authorized anything. Never even seen the paperwork. At first I thought it was a clerical error. Then we pulled the documents. Signature. My signature. Forged. My chest went cold. Because that wasn't betrayal anymore. That was a crime. A serious one. The account had been opened 6 weeks earlier with an initial deposit of $50,000 transferred from one of my investment portfolios. Funds moved using authorization credentials that only my husband should have known. And from that account, $25,000 had been transferred to her. The woman, which meant the loan she gave him, was actually my money. Stolen, filtered, repackaged. I sat back in the chair slowly, the realization settling like concrete in my stomach. He hadn't just planned to leave me. He had been financing his future with her, using my assets. My attorney looked at me carefully. "We can press charges," she said. "Forgery, financial fraud, identity theft." I didn't answer right away. Not because I was unsure, but because timing matters. "Not yet," I said finally. "Let him panic first. Because panic makes people careless. And careless people confess." That same night he showed up outside my apartment building. I saw him through the security camera. Disheveled. Exhausted. Nothing like the confident man who had kissed another woman in my kitchen days earlier. He called. I didn't answer. He texted. Long paragraphs. Apologies mixed with anger. Blame mixed with desperation. Then, about 40 minutes in, a message arrived that changed everything. "She used me." I stared at the screen. Another message followed immediately. She said if we got married eventually we'd both be secure. "I didn't think you'd ever find out." There was confirmation. Not just of the affair, but of the motive, the plan, the conspiracy. He hadn't married me for love. I had been an investment. A financial stepping stone. A bank account with a heartbeat. And he had just admitted it in writing. I took a screenshot. Forwarded it to my attorney. Then to the bank's fraud division. The response was fast. 2 hours later, the fraudulent account was frozen. IP access logs pulled. Authorization recordings reviewed. There was even a phone call on file. His voice. Impersonating my consent. By morning, the evidence was overwhelming. Forgery confirmed. Fraud confirmed. Intent confirmed. My attorney filed charges that same day. Identity theft. Financial fraud. Breach of fiduciary duty within a marital agreement. The fallout was immediate. He was served papers in the parking lot of his gym. 2 officers. Public. Unexpected. Exactly the kind of shock that breaks denial. Meanwhile, she disappeared. Social media accounts deleted. Condo listings pulled. Phone disconnected. She knew what was coming, and she wasn't sticking around. But what she didn't realize was that the text he sent me outlining their plan included her full name, financial involvement, and promises. Under state law, that's conspiracy. I forwarded everything to an investigator. They took it seriously. Because this wasn't about infidelity anymore. It was about using marriage as a financial weapon. That night, he finally reached me. Voicemail. His voice shaking. The arrogance was gone. "I never wanted to hurt you," he said. "She made it sound temporary, like you'd never notice. You're always so busy." I thought. He stopped. Then whispered something that almost made me laugh. "But you noticed everything." Yes, I did. I noticed the hesitation in his voice months ago. The sudden gym memberships. The unexplained withdrawals. The emotional distance disguised as stress. I noticed the lies hidden inside affection. And the next time I saw him, wouldn't be at home. It would be in court. Because this wasn't just a divorce anymore. It was a prosecution. And I was done being the woman who trusted blindly. No, I was the woman who documented everything. Court didn't feel like drama. It felt quiet. Heavy. The kind of silence that presses against your chest while the truth sits in front of everyone, undeniable, complete. I walked in alone. No entourage. No theatrics. Just me. Him. The woman nowhere in sight. The judge didn't care about appearances. Judges don't. They care about evidence. And I had evidence in spades. Every tracker log. Every bank transfer. Every text. Every forged signature. Everything. The prosecution laid it out cleanly. No emotion. No flourish. Just facts. His face went pale when they played the audio of him and her planning the takeover. When they displayed the bank logs showing him siphoning my money. When they highlighted the forged documents with my signature. He had nothing to say. I didn't either. Because I didn't need to. The law spoke for me. Silence hung in the courtroom while the judge read the ruling. Charges: identity theft, financial fraud, breach of fiduciary duty, conspiracy. No plea bargains. No loopholes. Full restitution. Permanent criminal record. Zero claim to my assets. Everything I had worked for. Protected. He looked at me for the first time all week. Defeated. Humiliated. Powerless. And that's when I realized something important. I wasn't angry anymore. Not really. I was free. The woman never appeared. Her absence said more than any confession could have. I had already sealed my estate, locked down every asset, transferred beneficiaries, and removed them both from any possible claim. Theirs was a future built on lies. Mine was built on truth. After the court adjourned, I walked out alone. No applause. No cinematic soundtrack. Just the wind, the city buzzing around me, and the weight lifting from my shoulders. For the first time in weeks, I felt the air move freely through my chest. I drove out of town to the cabin my father left me years ago. Deep in the woods. No phones. No distractions. Just silence. I made a fire. Poured a glass of bourbon. The same one he and she had stolen from me for their toast to betrayal. This time it was mine. I held the glass, let the warmth seep in. And I thought about everything they took. And everything they didn't. My name. My freedom. My clarity. Truth isn't flashy. It doesn't need a stage. It waits quietly, until it's time to reveal itself. And when it does, it burns cleaner than any vengeance ever could. Because while they built their world on deception and greed, I rebuilt mine on precision, strategy, and truth. And that's a life no one can touch. No betrayal can break. No lie can erase. I sipped my bourbon, watched the flames flicker, and finally smiled. This was mine. All mine. And I had never felt more alive.